I'm running against the single worst candidate in the history of presidential politics. And you know what that does? That puts more pressure on me. Can you imagine if you lose to a guy like this?
Imagine it. I've been touching myself to it for a month now. Fortunately, we don't have to imagine it. Matter of fact, I say we impeach him again just for old time's sake before he leaves. What the hell?
Vice President-elect, let's listen in.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We don't have a final declaration of victory yet, but the numbers tell us it's clear. Tell us a clear and convincing story. We're going to win this race. Just look at what has happened since yesterday. 24 hours, we were behind in Georgia. Now we're ahead. And we're going to win that state. 24 hours ago, we were behind in Pennsylvania, and we are going to win Pennsylvania. And now we're ahead, but we're winning in Arizona, we're winning in Nevada, and in fact, our lead just doubled in Nevada. We're on track to over 300 electoral votes, electoral college votes. And look at the national numbers. We're going to win this race with a clear majority of the nation behind us. We've gotten over 74 million votes. Let me repeat that, 74 million votes. That's more than any presidential ticket has ever gotten in the history of the United States of America. And our vote total is still growing. We're beating Donald Trump by over 4 million votes. And that's a margin that's still growing as well. One of the things I'm especially proud of is how well we've done across America. And we're going to be the first Democrat to win in Arizona in 24 years. We're going to be the first Democrat to win Georgia in 28 years. And we've rebuilt the blue wall in the middle of the country that crumbled just 4 years ago. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the heartland of this nation. I know watching these vote tallies on TV moves very slow, and as slow as it goes, it can be numbing. But never forget, the tallies aren't just numbers. They represent votes and voters, men and women who exercise their fundamental right to have their voice heard. And what's becoming clear each hour is that record number of Americans of all races, faiths, religions chose change over more of the same. They've given us a mandate for action on COVID, the economy, climate change, systemic racism. They made it clear they want the country to come together, not continue to pull apart. The people spoke, more than 74 million Americans, and they spoke loudly for our ticket. But while we're waiting for the final results, I want people to know we're not waiting to get the work done and start the process. Yesterday, Senator Harris and I held meetings with groups of experts on public health and the economic crisis this country is facing. The pandemic, as you also know, is getting more worrisome all across the country. Daily cases are skyrocketing, and it's now believed that we could see as many as 200,000 cases in a single day. The death toll is approaching 240,000 lives lost to this virus. That's 240,000 empty chairs, kitchen tables, and dining room tables all across America. We'll never be able to measure all that pain and the loss, the suffering that so many families have experienced. We know something about what it feels like to lose someone. And I want them to know they're not alone. Our hearts break with you. I want everyone to know on day one, we're going to put our plan to control this virus into action. We can't save any of the lives lost, any of those who have been lost, but we can save a lot of lives in the months ahead. Senator Harris and I also heard yesterday about how this recovery is slowing because of the failure to get the pandemic under control. More than 20 million people are on unemployment. Millions are worried about making rent and putting food on the table. Our economic plan will put a focus on a path to a strong recovery. Look, we both know tensions are high. They can be high after a tough election, one like we've had. But we need to remember, we have to remain calm, patient. Let the process work out as we count all the votes. You know, we're proving again what we've proved for 244 years in this country. Democracy works. Your vote will be counted. I don't care how hard people try to stop it. I will not let it happen. The people will be heard. Our journey is toward a more perfect union, and it keeps moving on. In America, we hold strong views. We have strong disagreements, and that's okay. Strong disagreements are inevitable in a democracy, and strong disagreements are healthy. They're a sign of a vigorous debate, of deeply held views. But we have to remember, the purpose of our politics isn't total, unrelenting, unending warfare. No, the purpose of our politics, the work of the nation, isn't to fan the flames of conflict, but to solve problems, to guarantee justice, to give everybody a fair shot, and to improve the lives of our people. We may be opponents, but we're not enemies. We're Americans. No matter who you voted for, I'm certain of one thing. The vast majority of almost 150 million Americans who voted, they want to get the vitriol out of our politics. We're certainly not going to agree on a lot of issues, but at least we can agree to be civil with one another. We have to put the anger and the demonization behind us. It's time for us to come together as a nation to heal. It's not going to be easy, but we have to try. My responsibility as president will be to represent the whole nation. And I want you to know that I'll work as hard for those who voted against me as those who voted for me. That's the job. That's the job. It's called the duty of care for all Americans. We have serious problems to deal with, from COVID to the economy to racial justice to climate change. We don't have any more time to waste on partisan warfare. You know, and more than that, we have such an incredible opportunity to build the future we want for our kids and our grandkids. I've said many, many times, I've never been more optimistic about the future of this nation. There is no reason we can't own the 21st century. We just need to remember who we are. This is the United States of America. And there's never been anything we've been unable to do, unable to accomplish when we've done it together. I hope to be talking to you tomorrow. I want to thank you all, and may God bless you, and may God protect our troops. Good night.
Former Vice President Joe Biden walking out with his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris. It was quite a contrast from what we heard from President Trump yesterday, if that's when it was. President Trump's address was about him. It was about his anger. It was about his grievance. It was about his desire to stay in power. We just heard a different message from the former vice president, who said that nothing was official yet, but that he thought that it was clear where things were going, that they were going to win the race. He talked about how he thought it was a mandate that he was getting from the American people, he and Senator Harris, given the 74 million votes as of now for him and the Electoral College victory that seems quite within his grasp. And he talked about how the nation needs to come together, that people might be opponents, but they are not enemies. And lastly, I thought it was interesting that he talked about the voting process and the counting process and how, in fact, it could be numbing, in his words, but people needed to remember that these tallies don't represent just numbers. These represent voters.
That's right. I mean, look, he leaned into the fact that he believes he's going to win. He was very specific in the states in which he has pulled ahead: Pennsylvania, Georgia, talked about Arizona and Nevada as well, which is understandable. But beyond that, what was so striking was how big the speech was. Big and all-encompassing, and not just about the specifics about coronavirus and other things that he wants to do, which are very important, but about democracy and about coming together and about the need for a more perfect union. I mean, it was a soaring speech, as soaring as we have heard from Joe Biden, maybe since his Gettysburg speech during the campaign. But he has made the pivot from candidate to president-elect rhetorically. That is what he wanted to communicate.
Yeah, I was struck by exactly that. He said the purpose of our politics isn't total unrelenting warfare. Mm-hmm. He knows what's coming, and that this is not going to be a walk in the park in terms of dealing with the fallout from a contentious election. But he's signaling very strongly that his intention is to move forward. Mm-hmm. And I did think it was also notable, we were discussing this earlier in the day, you know, Joe Biden is president also because the liberal wing of the party stuck with him. Mm-hmm. And you heard him refer to that today. Mm-hmm. He said this was a mandate for action on the coronavirus, on climate, on racism. Those are all big picture priorities for Democrats, the Democratic base. He called them out specifically tonight to send a message, and both messages at the same time, which was clearly very intentional, just signaling to people he's going to try to do both things.
Yesterday, President Trump, in all caps, issued a press release in which he said, if you count all the votes, the legal votes, I win. If you count the illegal votes, then they win. We discussed how the theory that he didn't tweet this because if he had tweeted it, it would have been flagged as false election information by Twitter or Facebook if he put it there. So he put it out in a press release. And then he came out. We didn't know what he was going to say. We're long past the point of hoping for a pivot from this president. But he started his remarks immediately with this thing that if he had put it on Twitter, it would have been flagged as false. With just a lie about the election. We didn't hear that tonight. No. We didn't hear Joe Biden mention Donald Trump.
No, there was only...
It was just about the fact that the voting was happening, the counting was happening, the numbers represent voters, and we're going to get to work. We need to come together as a country.
The only slight allusion to the president was, I know how hard people are going to try to stop it, meaning the counting. But no, it was not about him. It was about the country and about what he's going to do. The other thing I thought was really, really telling, and I think we're going to see and hear a lot more of this just on the politics of Joe Biden's potential win, when and if that happens, is if he does win, and if he does, looking at the screen, get the first state, Georgia, and the last state there, Arizona, that's a huge deal for a Democrat to be able to claim wins in those two states, if in fact it does happen. Particularly if you look at, when he talks about the blue wall, talked about it tonight, rebuilding that when you talk about the Midwest. But he's also talking about the Southwest and a totally different kind of Democratic Party that is alive there.
Yeah, I mean, if these gains hold on this map, this is a new map. This is a Joe Biden map, similarly to how in 2008, when Barack Obama won, you know, North Carolina and Indiana, those were changed and solidified states like Colorado. Those were changes to the map in a Barack Obama era. This is a different era that Joe Biden is going to have to define. What kind of mandate is he reading out of what happened? There were some mixed results for Democrats on Tuesday, but if you heard Joe Biden tonight, it sounded like he felt that he could govern without viewing this as a sort of divided result. He said he had a mandate, and I think that's an interesting, but it's an intentional choice, because obviously one could argue that even a mandate, even 300, he ends up with 306 electoral votes. Even with that, these margins in some of these states are so narrow, and the fighting was so bitter that the country remains divided. But he's choosing to lead as if he has a mandate, even with a smaller majority in the House of Representatives, even not knowing that Democrats are unlikely to take over the Senate. That's going to be, I think, an interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that is executed.
Yeah, although I mean, in all fairness, when Donald Trump won the same number of electoral votes with slimmer margins, although we don't know the final result, and he lost the popular vote, he certainly claimed a mandate. He called it a landslide, which which hadn't happened. You noted that a Democrat hadn't won Georgia since 1992. And I don't think a Democrat had won Arizona since 1996. You have to go back to 1992 to find a time that an American president, incumbent, ran for re-election and lost.
That's right.
So we're all looking at Joe Biden as having done something potentially quite unique in decades, but also we're looking to see what exactly Donald Trump does, how he handles himself, if it's with anything close to the grace that George H.W. Bush demonstrated back in 1992. Anderson?
Jake, thanks very much. It was interesting to hear Dana say that she felt it was a soaring address. One of the things I was thinking is just how kind of normal and traditionally presidential a speech it was, ran some 7 minutes or so. And perhaps that sounds particularly soaring given what we have become used to over the last 4 years, just in the kind of remarks we're used to hearing. So I also thought it was interesting that he both talked about made sure to talk about the human losses, the pain that exists out there because of the deaths of so many Americans, and also the economic losses. Clearly, it's one of those messages that I think he is going to be trying to send in the next several days, both addressing the pandemic itself, but also trying to talk about mitigation efforts on the pandemic as a way to bridge to try to help the economic pain that's out there.
When you think about Donald Trump's speech last night, it was all about challenging the legitimacy of the process, undermining democracy, charging falsely that, votes weren't counted, et cetera, and that the votes should stop being counted. Biden tonight spoke about the legitimacy of democracy and applauded democracy and praised the way it works. And he was optimistic. He was not full of grievance. This wasn't about me. It was about America, 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 and being president of all Americans. And when I listened to it, I thought, okay, this is a speech that was kind of written by professionals who understand what it's like to be a gracious winner and to behave that way. One thing that I noticed that he pointed out was we're already at work. And I know our colleagues were talking about that, but I can tell you that his transition is in full swing, as it has been. And maybe that's what he'll talk about if the race is called tomorrow. And maybe he'll give us some more indication of his bipartisanship. But they're moving. They're moving about what they're going to do, not only on COVID, but on everything. And I remember the Trump transition where Chris Christie came in with a big transition book and they threw it out the day after they got elected. So this is completely the polar opposite of what we're used to.
I'm happy. I'm just going to say, I'm happy. I like the speech. I like the empathy. I like the optimism. I like it. It's just good. And, this guy's going to need a lot of help. Okay, if he wants to do what he's talking about, if he wants to bring people together, he's going to need a lot of help. And he's asking for it, and he's worthy of it. Winston Churchill says, deserve victory. That's a man that deserves the help of a nation to get together. I like the speech. And just when he talks about civility, that shouldn't be corny stuff. Civility, that's what we were raised by. It's what we were raised to be. Listen, Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
I'm just happy.
Okay. Rick Santorum, and I want to hear from David, and then we got to go back.
Yeah. The only thing that I think Republicans will look at that speech as a perfectly fine speech. I think he was right. It was sort of a normal speech. I don't know of any president who gets elected who doesn't say they have a mandate, but I think Republicans don't see it that way. I think that'll be the real question here.
David Ekstrom?
I think the most important things he said had to do, we may be opponents, but we're not enemies. We're Americans. We got to get past the anger, and we need to put anger and demonization behind us. And he promised to be a president for everyone. We don't have a minute to waste on partisan warfare. I think these are important messages at a time when the country is on sort of a jagged edge after a very, very rough campaign. And given the presidency that we just saw, my only question is, what is he going to say tomorrow if he gets elected? Because you expect that he's going to hit the same themes all over again. So
I don't mind.
Exactly.
Say it again.
But if Van's happy, I'm happy.
All right, let's go back to Jake.
Thanks, Anderson. We have some breaking news. Let's go right to our White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, who has some news, some rather bad news on the coronavirus front. Caitlin?
Yeah, Jake, not election related, but we are now confirming from a White House official that the president's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has tested positive for coronavirus. This is notable because Meadows, of course, is someone who works in close proximity with not only the president, but has been around several campaign officials and top.
The Senate is still in play. Repeat, the Senate is still in play.
Georgia's second race will be a runoff.
Georgia's headed to a January runoff for its Senate seat, and that means we are headed to battle.
We have a call on Nebraska 2.
Rebellion helped deliver Nebraska.
And it's a single congressional district in Nebraska.
With targeted TV ads in the 2nd Congressional District. Rebellion helped deliver Michigan in the same way. And now we're going to deliver Georgia's Senate seat by building a progressive coalition and dropping a massive ad buy in the district. We must take back the Senate so that we can undo the damage in the courts, defeat COVID, and stop Republican gerrymandering that has strangled our democracy for so long. Go to helptherebellion.com to help us drop an ad blitz in Georgia.